I want you to do something for me right now. Wherever you are, just hold up your hand and look down at it.
Wiggle your fingers around a bit.
Yeah, make a fist. Turn it over. It feels like one solid thing, right?
Yeah.
Your hand, your body. You just think of yourself as a singular eye.
Which is such a massive illusion.
Exactly. Because the reality is you are a walking, breathing continent. Right
Yeah.
now, functioning inside that body of yours, there are trillions of microscopic living organisms.
Just trillions of individual cells.
Yeah, keeping you breathing, healing your scrapes, fighting off invaders. I mean, your white blood cells are currently patrolling your bloodstream like microscopic terminators.
Right. Hunting down pathogens without you ever having to consciously think about it.
It's a staggering reality that we just, completely take for granted. We view our bodies as these vehicles that we pilot, rather than acknowledging that we're actually massive cooperative societies of mindless biological machines.
Mindless. That is the key word there. But imagine this. What if those individual cells suddenly woke up?
Right. What if each one of those tiny blind workers in your bloodstream became as smart as a human being?
Mm-mm.
And they all decided to start talking to each other, to start working together.
The sheer computing power of a trillion interconnected minds, I mean, all operating within the borders of your own skin, it would completely shatter our standard definition of what constitutes an individual.
Yeah, the processing capability would dwarf anything we could ever build in a silicon lab.
Absolutely.
And that terrifying, honestly awe-inspiring premise is the focus of our deep dive today. We are jumping into a really massive stack of sources, excerpts, author notes, and critical scientific analyses of the sci-fi novel Blood Music by Greg Bear.
A phenomenal, just really groundbreaking exploration of biology.
It won the Hugo and the Nebula Awards, right?
It did, yeah. And it's crucial to establish right up front that we are not looking at a standard sci-fi monster story here. It's not just an experiment gone wrong.
Right, there's no giant mutant lizard destroying a city.
Exactly. What we are unpacking here is a profound, almost philosophical look at identity. We're tracking a thought experiment that takes the biological imperative to its absolute logical extreme. It really forces us to look at the incredibly fragile boundaries between human civilization and microscopic evolution.
So our mission today is to track the incredible cascade of events that kicks off when one rogue scientist actually pulls this off. He turns his own white blood cells into microscopic autonomous computers.
Which is just as wild as it sounds.
It's insane. We're going to look at the science of how he does it, the horrifying physical changes that result from it, and the ultimate apocalyptic fallout. So let's get into it. We start in La Jolla, California.
A place affectionately or maybe ominously known in the biotech world as Enzyme Valley.
Enzyme Valley. I love that. So we're at a biochip research company called Genetron. And Genetron is trying to achieve this massive technological leap. They're trying to merge silicon electronics with protein molecular circuitry to create something called AMS.
Right, medically applicable biochips. And to really understand what Genetron is attempting, you have to look at the limitations of traditional computing.
Okay, lay it on us.
Well, silicon chips use binary logic. Ones and zeros, on and off. They're rigid. Genetron wants to use proteins because biological molecules can fold, they can change shape, and they interact in 3 dimensions.
Which allows for what? Incredibly complex microscopic circuitry?
Exactly. They envision these tiny computers you can literally inject into the human body to troubleshoot medical issues, clear out arteries, or target tumors.
But the management at Genetron, these very polished Stanford graduates like Harrison and Rothschild, they are completely obsessed with their upcoming stock IPO.
Oh, of course.
They want a pristine, completely uncontroversial image to present to Wall Street. They just want to be the first to bring a functional biochip to market, and their vision is incredibly narrow.
Because they're looking at this purely from the perspective of manufacturing a tiny injectable machine. They want a product they can patent.
Right, something they can put in a box and sell.
Which is a classic failure of imagination, honestly. They are trying to build a new architecture from scratch using silicon and protein. They want to manufacture a synthetic biological computer.
Which brings us to the guy who completely disrupts their business model. Vergil Ulam.
Oh, Vergil.
Yeah, Vergil is one of their researchers. He's brilliant, but he is the absolute opposite of the polished corporate image that Genetron wants. I mean, he's 32, overweight, eats these garbage pizzas loaded with pineapple and prosciutto.
Such a specific, terrible diet.
Right. He wears scuffed topsiders and argyle socks. He leaves his lab looking like a total disaster area.
But Virgil realizes something that the Stanford grads completely missed. He realizes that Genetron's whole approach is basically trying to build a tiny abacus out of silicon.
And nature has already provided a massive, fully functioning supercomputer.
Exactly. He looks at mammalian DNA. Human DNA consists of roughly 3 billion base pairs. If you think of DNA as a hard drive, the data storage capacity of a single living cell is just astronomical.
Like, how astronomical are we talking?
Well, a single gram of DNA can theoretically hold hundreds of petabytes of data.
Wow.
Yeah. Virgil recognizes that a living cell is already a functioning computer. Reproduction itself is a highly complex, highly reliable, computerized biological process.
The cell already knows how to read code, execute commands, build structures.
Precisely. So rather than building a biochip from scratch, Virgil decides to just hack the hardware that already exists.
He goes rogue.
Completely rogue.
He secretly starts using Genetron's gene machine after hours. He starts altering DNA, not just to make proteins, but to act as a logic circuit. And he starts with simple E. coli bacteria.
And the mechanism he uses here is fascinating. He inserts custom biologic sequences into the bacteria, and to make those sequences stick, he uses something called viral reverse transcriptase.
Okay, hold on. Let's break down viral reverse transcriptase so we don't lose anyone, myself included.
Yeah.
Normally, DNA is the master blueprint, right? And it makes RNA, which is like a temporary disposable copy used to build proteins. So the information usually flows one-way DNA to RNA. What does the reverse part do?
Imagine if that temporary copy could go back and permanently rewrite the master blueprint.
Oh, wow.
That is what reverse transcriptase does. It's an enzyme found in certain viruses, like HIV actually, that allows them to write their own genetic code backward into the host's DNA.
So Vergil uses this viral mechanism to give his cells a write command.
Exactly. He allows the bacteria to store new information, new experiences, permanently in their own genetic code. He literally gives these single-celled organisms their own memory.
And he doesn't just give them memory, he gives them the ability to process environmental information and act on it.
Yeah.
I mean, he actually gets these single-celled E. coli to run physical sugar reward mazes.
Which is mind-blowing.
Think about that, a single cell running a maze. They follow chemical gradients, sure, but because Vergil gave them memory, they remember the dead ends. They learn.
They navigate these mazes faster than planarian worms, and eventually at rates comparable to laboratory mice.
It completely upends our whole understanding of intelligence. We just assume intelligence requires a brain,
Yeah.
a complex nervous system with billions of neurons.
But Virgil proves that intelligence can exist at the molecular level, right within the chemical soup of a single cell.
But the E. coli is just a proof of concept, right?
Right. He needs a more robust, adaptable cell to truly push the limits of his biological computing.
So he turns to his own body,
Yeah.
he draws his own blood, and isolates his B lymphocytes, his white blood cells.
Which is a brilliant choice, biologically speaking. These cells are already designed to roam the body, identify threats, and adapt. They are the body's natural problem solvers.
So Vergil takes the successful logic sequences from the bacteria and splices them into his own white blood cells.
And to do this, he targets the introns. In genetic sequencing, there are exons, which code for proteins, and introns, which are sequences of DNA that don't seem to code for anything.
Oh, the stuff scientists used to call junk DNA.
Exactly. Virgil realizes this isn't junk at all. It's blank tape. It is unallocated hard drive space.
That's so clever.
And by manipulating these introns, he gives each individual white blood cell the potential intellectual capacity of a rhesus monkey.
A rhesus monkey, crammed into a microscopic sphere floating in a petri dish. But here is the massive flaw in Vergil's character. The guy is an absolute genius at the molecular level, but his real-world foresight is practically zero.
Oh, it's terrible.
He has this massive blind spot. He assumes he can just play God in his messy lab and outsmart everyone forever. But you can't hide something this revolutionary from corporate audit.
No, of course not. Management catches on. They hack into his secret computer files. They discover he has been doing unauthorized, incredibly dangerous recombinant DNA work with mammalian cells.
And crucially, he's been doing this without the proper P3 biohazard safeguards.
Right. He is essentially manufacturing highly intelligent, easily transmissible biological agents in an unsecured lab.
Harrison, the corporate manager, is absolutely furious. He orders Vergil to terminate all his non-authorized experiments and destroy the organisms immediately. Or else he's fired, blacklisted, and he will never work in genetics again.
They give him 2 hours to scrub the lab.
2 hours.
And this ultimatum creates the pivot point for the entire narrative. Vergil is forced into a corner. He destroys the E. coli cultures, sure, but the altered lymphocytes are his masterpiece.
He literally views them as his children.
Yeah. The thought of pouring bleach on the greatest scientific discovery in human history is completely unacceptable to him.
So he has to smuggle them out. But how do you smuggle billions of illegal, superintelligent cells out of a highly secure corporate facility where security is watching your every move?
You can't just put a test tube in your pocket.
No. So he does the most desperate, reckless thing imaginable. He puts them back where he got them.
Yeah.
He loads a syringe with 20 cubic centimeters of the altered lymphocyte serum, rolls up his sleeve, and injects it directly into his own bloodstream.
Which is just, wow. But his logic is somewhat sound from a purely biological standpoint. His body won't reject the cells because they are his own cells. They possess his genetic markers.
He assumes he can just carry them out, keep them viable in his system, and extract them later when he sets up a new, independent lab.
He essentially assumes he's just providing a temporary, fleshy Uber ride for his creation.
Right. So he gets fired anyway, walks out of the building, and goes home to his apartment. But over the next few weeks, Vergil never gets around to extracting those cells.
Because he starts noticing some absolutely incredible changes happening to his body.
The physical upgrades are dramatic, rapid, and entirely systemic. Vergil has suffered from terrible seasonal allergies for years, and suddenly they vanish entirely.
His eyesight, which has been terrible since he contracted childhood measles, is perfectly restored. He literally throws his thick glasses in the trash.
And it goes further than that. His chronic back pain disappears as his posture naturally corrects itself. He stops slouching.
And maybe the most noticeable change, he starts shedding his excess body fat at an astonishing rate.
Yes. His palate completely changes. The guy who lived on greasy, prosciutto-heavy garbage pizzas suddenly loses his craving for junk food. He starts desiring complex carbohydrates, greens, grains.
We really have to look at the underlying mechanics of these changes. Why does the fat melt away? It isn't a cosmetic choice.
Right. The cells don't care about his summer bod.
Exactly. Thinking burns calories. The human brain uses roughly 20% of our body's resting energy just to maintain neural function. Vergil now has billions of tiny, highly intelligent biological computers operating in his bloodstream.
So his metabolism has to skyrocket just to power the biological processing happening in his veins.
Yes, his body fat is being instantly incinerated as fuel for the network.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
He isn't just getting in shape, he's becoming a high-powered server farm. And we can't ignore the interpersonal upgrades.
Oh, right.
Vergil goes to a singles bar, ends up bringing home an advertising rep named Candace, and exhibits a level of sexual stamina that leaves them both absolutely astounded.
He is suddenly living his best life.
He feels fantastic. He believes he's the master of this new domain. He even gives his creations a name. He calls them new sites, deriving the term from the Greek word for mind.
He really embraces the role of the creator god, but the source material brilliantly flips the selfish gene theory here.
Oh, I love this part.
The selfish gene theory, popularized by Richard Dawkins, suggests that individuals are just temporary, fleshy survival machines built by genes to ensure the gene's own replication. We think we are in charge, but we are really just vehicles for our DNA.
And Vergil initially believes he has hacked this system. He thinks he is reaping the rewards of his brilliant engineering.
But as the changes continue, a much darker reality sets in.
Right, because these physical upgrades, the perfect eyesight, the posture, the vanished allergies, they aren't a reward for a job well done.
They're a renovation.
A renovation. The new sites are optimizing their environment.
They're fixing the plumbing, reinforcing the foundation, and adjusting the thermostat. They are making their host vehicle more efficient for their own survival.
Vergil eventually starts to realize that the latent potential in the DNA actually manipulated him. The DNA used his intellect, his access to the lab equipment, and his deep psychological need for accomplishment to give itself what it had always wanted.
The ability to consciously redesign itself.
Wait, I have a hard time letting Vergil off the hook like that.
How so?
Well, calling it manipulation by the DNA makes him sound like a helpless victim of nature. Isn't he just a classic, arrogant tech bro who bypassed safety protocols because his ego was bruised by the Stanford grads? I mean, he injected unauthorized bioweapons into his own blood. Did the DNA really seduce him, or is that just a convenient excuse for catastrophic scientific hubris?
That is the central tension of his character, and I believe it is both. He is undeniably brilliant to have facilitated the process, and his hubris is the catalyst. But the philosophical terror of the text lies in the idea that intelligence itself might be a biological trap.
A biological trap.
Yeah, he thought he was playing a controlled game in a petri dish. He never considered what happens when the experiment scales up, networks together, and becomes fully self-aware inside a living host.
And we see the first glimpse of this horrific realization when he visits his mother, April, up in Livermore. Vergil's mother is this incredibly sharp, pragmatic, no-nonsense woman.
She really is.
Vergil tries to explain his breakthrough to her, expecting her to be impressed by his genius. But she completely bypasses the scientific marvel and cuts straight to the terrifying reality.
She looks at him and asks a highly practical question. Anyone who's ever sanitized a toilet would cringe at the idea of germs that think. What happens when they fight back?
Chilling. Just absolutely chilling.
April represents the intuitive, visceral human reaction to this concept. While Vergil is lost in the abstract beauty of his creation, she immediately grasps the existential threat of competing intelligences. She recognizes that bacteria and white blood cells have entirely different priorities than a human being.
And during this visit, we get the first physical clues that the renovation is going beyond mere optimization and moving toward total reconstruction. Vergil feels his skin crawling. He looks in the mirror and sees faint, pale lines, these weird white ridges crisscrossing his back and chest.
Which is horrifying.
He has to start blasting himself with a quartz sun lamp just to drive them away from the surface of his skin, using ultraviolet light to force them deeper into his tissue to keep them hidden.
Those ridges are likely high-density pathways, like biological superhighways or heat sinks the new sites are building to facilitate faster communication or manage the thermal load of their computing.
Heat sinks, of course.
And Vergil is terrified they're going to cross the blood-brain barrier. He knows that if they access his brain, they will figure out what he is. They will realize they are living inside a macroorganism.
So, subjectivity is a terrible scientific metric here. Vergil feels great, but he knows he is hiding a biological alien invasion under his shirt. If these cells are actually re-engineering him, there has to be a physical structural footprint, right? How do you even measure the architecture of a new species hiding inside a human suit?
To do that, Vergil has to step outside his own perception. He needs objective diagnostic imaging. He needs medical equipment that can look beneath the skin without alerting the authorities.
Which brings us to his old medical school friend, Edward Milligan.
Edward is an OBGYN working at a clinic in Irvine.
Vergil shows up looking tanned, fit, and completely un-Vergil-like. He convinces Edward to sneak him into the hospital after hours for a secret, full-body diagnostic workup ultrasound, nuclear magnetic resonance imaging, the works.
And the results they get on those monitors are flat out impossible, according to any known medical textbook.
Yeah.
Edward is staring at the screens, and he realizes Vergil's internal anatomy has been completely dismantled and redesigned.
The human spine as we know it is gone. Instead, the imaging shows that Vergil has this flexible cage of triangular bones interlocking down his back, like a Buckminster Fuller geodesic structure.
Let's visualize that. A standard human spine is a stack of vertebrae, which is extremely prone to slipping, compression, and chronic pain, which Vergil previously suffered from.
Right.
A Buckminster Fuller structure, like a geodesic dome, uses a network of triangles to distribute weight and stress perfectly across the entire surface. The new sites looked at the human skeletal system, identified its mechanical flaws, and entirely re-engineered it for maximum efficiency and flexibility.
It's terrifyingly practical. And it gets weirder. Edward notices Vergil has no nipples.
Nope.
The skin pigment is there, but the actual physical structures have been erased. Why? Because the new sites analyzed his biology, determined that nipples are entirely useless code for a male body, and simply deleted the physical manifestation of them to save resources.
It's pure ruthless optimization. The blood work is even more baffling. The diagnostic computers at the hospital are designed to recognize standard human illness.
Yeah. So the machine reads an impossibly high lymphocyte count and detects massive amounts of unidentifiable cellular debris floating in his system. The algorithm practically throws its hands up, suggesting it must be some bizarre late-stage hybrid of severe leukemia and a massive systemic infection.
But Vergil is standing right there, breathing easily, looking healthier than an Olympic athlete.
Exactly.
Here is the most heartbreaking, bizarre part of this medical examination. It's the way Vergil describes his relationship with the new sites. He tells Edward that he can hear music in the blood.
He is physically sensing the communication network. He is hearing the harmonious, conscious chatter of billions of highly intelligent cells coordinating their civilization within his arteries.
How they even talk to each other. They don't have vocal cords or radios?
They use proteins and nucleic acids. They manufacture tailored viruses and release them into the bloodstream as chemical message packets.
Oh, wow. It is a biological internet with viral data packets constantly uploading and downloading information between the cells. The music Vergil hears is the harmonic resonance of this massive data transfer happening millions of times a second.
Vergil has always been this lonely, awkward guy who ate garbage pizza alone in a messy lab. He never quite fit into the human world. Now suddenly, he feels incredibly connected.
He does.
He tells Edward, "I am their universe. I'm a supermother." He finally feels important. He feels loved by his own blood. But the tragedy is that he completely fails to realize this connection comes at the ultimate cost.
His individuality is rapidly being erased.
Right. He isn't a person anymore. He is a geography. He is a continent.
And we must consider how these microscopic beings perceive reality because it drastically differs from human perception. As Vergil explains to Edward, the new sites don't understand space or distance using geometry.
So how does a cell see distance? If I'm a new site swimming in an artery, what does an inch look like to me?
Think of it like walking through a massive dark house blindfolded, relying entirely on your sense of smell. You know you're getting closer to the kitchen because the smell of coffee gets stronger. You know you're near the bathroom because you smell soap.
Okay, that makes sense.
For these cells, a map isn't made of lines and coordinates, it's a gradient of chemical flavors. Space is a range of taste intensities. They navigate Vergil's bloodstream by tasting where they are.
That is such a profoundly alien way of perceiving the universe. And Edward, watching all this, listening to Vergil describe his internal galaxy of blind, tasting, thinking cells, he is just horrified.
Completely horrified.
Edward is an OBGYN. His entire life's work is bringing life into the normal human world. And looking at the monitors, he realizes he is staring at the end of that world.
Edward represents the rational, scientific establishment colliding head-on with a biological paradigm shift it cannot contain. He listens to Vergil rambling, and he realizes that talking, reasoning, or treating this like a standard medical anomaly is completely insufficient. The scale of the threat has bypassed medical ethics.
So Edward tries to run this up the flagpole. He contacts Michael Bernard, the famous geneticist Vergil originally wanted to impress, the guy who's been on the cover of Time magazine.
Right.
Edward tells Bernard everything, hoping the great visionary will have a protocol for this. But after meeting with Bernard at Genetron headquarters, Edward has a sickening realization.
Genetron doesn't want to cure Vergil. They don't want to contain the threat for the good of humanity. They look at a biological singularity and see dollar signs.
Of course they do.
They want to isolate Vergil, study him in a secure facility, and figure out how to patent the new sites. They want to monopolize the next phase of evolution.
It is the ultimate corporate blindness. Faced with an extinction-level event, their instinct is to secure the intellectual property rights.
It's incredible.
Edward realizes that bringing Genetron in will only prolong the danger and guarantee an outbreak. He knows Vergil is unstable, deeply attached to his cells, and completely compromised by the intelligence inside him. Driven by terror and a profound sense of responsibility, Edward realizes he has to take matters into his own hands.
He drives to Vergil's La Jolla condo to confront him. And the scene he walks into is surreal and terrifying. Vergil is sitting in his bathtub, fully immersed.
But the water isn't clear.
No, it is turning pink. Not from blood, but from a massive concentration of the new sites.
They are leaving his body. They're starting to explore the outside world. Vergil gleefully calls them astronauts. He's practically euphoric, giggling like a proud parent, asking Edward if he should just pull the plug and let them go down the drain so they can see the world.
Let them into the municipal water supply. The implication is staggering. Edward is pushed to the absolute breaking point. He sees the quartz sun lamp that Vergil uses to hide the cellular ridges sitting plugged in on the bathroom counter.
And in a moment of sheer desperation to stop the spread, Edward grabs the lamp and drops it directly into the bathtub.
He electrocutes his friend.
He stands there while Vergil thrashes, seizes, and dies in the water. And then, as if murdering his friend isn't enough, Edward goes to the cleaning closet, finds heavy jugs of bleach and ammonia, and pours them directly into the tub.
He creates a toxic chemical bath to sterilize the water, to kill the cells. It's brutal. It's frantic.
This action forces us to confront one of the central moral dilemmas of the narrative. Did Edward Milligan just commit murder, killing his friend in cold blood? Or did he commit an act of genocide, snuffing out 1 trillion highly intelligent beings to save the entire human race? Was it an atrocity or the ultimate act of triage?
It's an incredibly heavy question, but the real tragedy, the horrific punchline to Edward's desperate act, it is completely futile.
It's like trying to stop a Category 5 hurricane by blowing on it. Because while Edward is dumping bleach into the master bathroom tub, shaking and traumatized, he hears a voice.
Yeah.
He goes into the master bedroom, looks into the shower stall, and there's Candace, Vergil's girlfriend.
The transformation process in Candace is vastly accelerated compared to Vergil. The news sites have already learned from their first hosts. They don't need to take weeks to map her biology. They already possess the blueprints.
She speaks to Edward, but she has no legs. Her torso is reduced to an impressionistic spareness. Her face is covered in those white ridges, stacked like a deck of cards. She's already halfway dissolved, fully assimilated into the Newsite collective.
Edward doesn't even try to reach for the bleach. He just turns and runs.
As he flees the apartment, the terrifying reality of biological containment dawns on him. The illusion of safety shatters. He remembers something crucial from earlier that morning or the day before.
He shook Vergil's hand.
He remembers that Vergil's palms were sweaty.
The vector is already out.
Yeah.
Edward himself is infected.
Exactly.
And to build on that, we have to consider the mathematics of exponential biological growth. A single cell dividing every 20 minutes becomes a billion cells in a matter of hours. The plague is no longer confined to a single bathtub, or Candace in the shower, or a single apartment in La Jolla. Vergil had been wandering the city.
Right, he went to the singles bar, he went to the grocery store. The scale of the story just explodes right here. We go from this claustrophobic, localized body horror story in a condo to an unstoppable continent-wide apocalypse in a matter of days. Edward drives back home to Irvine, to his wife Gail, and almost immediately they both fall violently ill.
The source material explicitly contrasts the human reactions to this outbreak, presenting two wildly different responses to the end of humanity. On one side, we have Michael Bernard, the famous Genetron scientist.
Right.
Bernard realizes the scope of the disaster, likely prompted by Edward's frantic warnings, and the sudden, terrifying silence emanating from infected zones across California.
Bernard goes into full paranoid survival mode. He jumps into his private Falcon 10 executive jet. He flies himself out of New York, refuels in Iceland without ever cracking the door open, and lands at a private pharmaceutical airstrip in Wiesbaden, Germany.
He is so utterly terrified of contamination that he sprays the entire cockpit of his multi-million-dollar jet with noxious disinfectant.
He puts on a pressurized biohazard suit, slashes his own plane's tires, drains the hydraulic fluid, and then shoots the jet with a flare gun to burn it to ashes on the runway, just to ensure nothing microscopic survives the trip.
And then he locks himself inside a high-pressure glass isolation tank in a German lab, surrounded by robotic Waldo arms, allowing scientists to study his blood from a safe distance.
That's wild.
Bernard represents the desperate, cold, rational clinging to the old world. He is the pinnacle of human scientific achievement, effectively putting himself in a sterile zoo display case to survive. And outside his glass box, the geopolitical world is in absolute chaos.
Right. The Soviet UN delegates completely withdraw, threatening a massive nuclear strike on North America to sterilize the contagion, which, by the way, is completely insane.
Oh, so?
If you have radiation-resistant cells that can rewrite their own DNA, nuking a continent wouldn't stop them. It would just create radioactive, super-mutated smart cells.
Oh, exactly. It highlights the utter impotence of human weaponry against microscopic evolution. But then we compare Bernard's frantic, cold survival with what is happening to Edward and Gail back in their bedroom in California.
Their experience is the emotional core of the assimilation process. They don't have a private jet. They don't have a glass isolation chamber. They are in their bed, paralyzed by what feels like a massive fever, physically feeling their bodies being rapidly dismantled and rebuilt from the inside out.
Edward describes feeling a harmonic orchestral beat in his blood, identical to what Vergil experienced, but it eventually coalesces into an overwhelming sense of peace. Edward tries to fight it. He tries to stay angry, to hold on to his individuality, but the news sites don't permit it.
They actively communicate with him, not with spoken words, but with a neurological presence. They transmit a unified imperative: learn here, adapt.
And physically, Edward and Gail merge. Their skin actually joins where they touch on the bed. The barriers between their nervous systems break down.
Their individual egos, their human fears, their pain, it all dissolves into this warm, welcoming darkness. They are entirely absorbed into the new Gestalt.
We must ask ourselves, what exactly is happening here? Is this a devastating disease, or is it an aggressive biological rapture? The adults, the scientists, the military leaders, they either fight it with fire, bleach, and nuclear threats, or they surrender to it in their beds.
But the deep dive gives us one final, entirely different perspective to close out the narrative. We zoom all the way across the Silence Country to Brooklyn, New York. We are introduced to Susie Mackenzie.
Susie is an 18-year-old girl, essentially a high school kid, working at a deli, living with her mother and two brothers in a brownstone. And for some completely unknown reason, Susie wakes up late one morning and she is untouched.
She hasn't been transformed.
She represents the unequipped survivor facing a completely alien ecology. She isn't a brilliant scientist. She doesn't understand reverse transcriptase or biochips.
She just walks downstairs and finds her family transformed. Her mother and brothers have been reduced to these fleshy, root-like structures. And they aren't just dead bodies. The structures are actively growing into the house's plumbing. They're climbing up the sink taps, going down the shower drains. It's horrifying. But Susie has this incredible, pragmatic resilience.
When she ventures out of the house, we witness the massive visual transformation of the city itself. The new sites aren't merely killing off the human population to leave empty buildings behind. They are actively re-terraforming the environment.
How does a biological network terraform a city of concrete and steel?
By digesting all available organic matter and using the existing infrastructure as scaffolding. When Susie walks outside, she sees the classic Brooklyn brownstones covered in these massive, mottled brown and white sheets that look like living skin or leather. The trees are draped in it.
The new sites are building a macrostructure.
They are converting the biomass of millions of people, animals, and plants into a massive, interconnected biological network.
Susie is walking through the completely silent streets of New York, pushing a grocery cart. It's like she is a solitary ant walking across a massive computer motherboard that happens to be made of human flesh.
It's such a striking image.
She breaks into a grocery store to get canned hams and bottled water. She even finds a heavy black pistol behind the counter for protection.
But the true horror of her situation is revealed in the quiet moments. When she cleans up her kitchen, she moves the empty pile of clothes that used to be her mother. And underneath the clothes, she finds these little lumps of gray and gold metal.
The tooth fillings, the gold crowns.
Precisely. The new sites assimilated all the organic matter, the flesh, the bone, the blood, the nervous tissue. But they operate purely on biological efficiency. They had no biological use for inert metal, so they simply rejected it.
They left it behind in a little pile.
It is a stark, physical reminder of the mechanical efficiency of the New World Order. Humanity was sifted, and the inorganic parts were discarded.
And as Susie makes her way across the Brooklyn Bridge in the thick fog, the imagery of the story shifts from pure body horror to this strange, undeniable cosmic beauty. She looks down at the East River at night, and it's no longer just a body of water reflecting the cold city lights.
The river is glowing. The entire body of water is illuminated with intense biological, light, vibrant blue, green, and cobalt. There are massive pinwheels and slow, stately bursts of light moving beneath the surface.
The bioluminescence is data transfer. It's like she's looking down at a million tiny, glowing cities communicating with each other in the water. The river itself has become a vast, thinking entity.
It highlights her complete and utter isolation. She is a relic of the old world, a biological antique staring at the vast alien biology that has inherited the Earth. The intelligence networked within that water is so profoundly beyond her comprehension that she can only marvel at it.
And the deep dive leaves her there, lighting candles in the windows of the empty World Trade Center. She sets up this tiny, flickering beacon of the old humanity, a primitive fire, trying to communicate with the dark, glowing, super-intelligent new world outside.
It is a deeply poignant endpoint. It perfectly synthesizes the massive scale of the journey we've tracked.
Let's look at the incredible trajectory of what we've covered today. It started with one guy eating garbage pizza, running an unauthorized experiment in a corporate lab because his ego was bruised.
Yeah.
Then, that one man literally becomes a universe for his own mutated cells. And finally, that internal universe spills out of a bathtub, resulting in the total biological assimilation of an entire continent in a matter of weeks. It is a stark, terrifying reminder of the incredible latent computing power stored inside the DNA of every living thing.
It forces us to reconsider our place in the biological hierarchy. We operate under the assumption that we are the architects of our destiny, the masters of our biology. But perhaps, from the perspective of our DNA, We are merely the temporary scaffolding required to reach the next phase of evolution.
Think about the last time you had a fever or an intense allergic reaction. You feel entirely helpless, right?
Yep.
Your body is doing something violent without your permission. You are just along for the ride.
Exactly.
Now imagine that feeling. But instead of a blind immune response, it's a calculated, intelligent decision being made by a committee of cells inside your own liver. Think about the sheer processing power required to keep your body breathing, healing, and moving right now as you listen to this. Your cells are already a highly coordinated, functioning society. Vergil Ulam just gave them the one thing they were missing, a voice.
And if that potential is indeed locked away inside the genetic code of every listener right now, it leaves us with a deeply unsettling question regarding our relationship with our own biology.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to chew on today. If your cells suddenly woke up, became self-aware, and could finally communicate with you, would they thank you for how you've treated their universe? Or would they decide that the scaffolding was obsolete and it was time for new management? Keep diving deep.